Hi everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Techie and Cyberware. Today is going to be an interesting session where we'll be talking about phishing incidents response triage. End game is to create an incident response flow. The first thing we'll need is a Docker container, and then our Docker container is going to host an N8N volume. This will serve as a separate entity on its own. That's why after this, other things I would need for this would be ngrok. Ngrok will be used to link our N8N instance to a public URL. Agent mail will be used to create an email server, and Gmail and other email accounts will also serve as another email server. You can choose to create an account with these three before or within the project. It's totally up to you. Next thing is going to be launching our N8N instance, and when we do this, we're going to require a number of other services like Gemini API key and app passwords. Gemini API key is what we link to our AI model. App password is how we are able to connect to another email server. We're also going to need AI prompts, JavaScript code, and automation workflow template. I'll provide all of this information, AI prompt, JavaScript workflow template, in my GitHub link that I would link to this video. So just to explain the connections, container linking to launch N8N instance, API key, password, and all of this. That's basically just an explanation of the entire flow, how they will work. Without further ado, I would like to proceed to the main video. So first step on my screen is to launch the Docker instance. I've already installed my Docker. So now using the following command, I would launch the N8N on my Docker container. So now N8N is opened. I want to create my ngrok account just like I've stated previously. I'll follow through the entire sign up process. And then once I'm done, I want to link my ngrok to my N8N instance on my local host. I'm using a Kali Linux, so I'll follow through this command and paste. I want to use this command as a single line command, so I'm just going to do a little bit of editing, and then when I'm done with this, I will simply just run the command and let it do its thing. If you want to be sure of what this command does, you may take your time to look through it, then understand what this command basically does. But it's just all commands put together to install ngrok. After the installation is complete, the next thing is to create an authentication key or link our authentication token from ngrok to the local host N8N, which we have done. So authentication key saved. Want to also now link it to our listening port number, which is 5678. And now we have a public URL available for us. With this public URL, we can access ngrok from our local host browser or from any other browser of our choice from anywhere in the world. So right now, this is N8N running on the browser of my local host. I've also moved to a different PC, and I'm also running N8N using the public URL, and it's also launching as well. So next thing is to create an account with Agent Mail. Agent Mail will serve as our proof of concept email, where we would be using a connector to listen in on the phishing email. Note that agent mail is just for the purpose of this video. We can use any other mail. So it's at this point you can use, if you're working with an organization, your domain email. You can also use Outlook or Gmail at this point. You just need to, have an account in mind where you want to listen on, and then follow through necessary configuration, and you'll be just fine. So I've created an account here, POC, proof of concept. I want to test that this account can both send and receive email. So the first step is to send an email to my other email account, which is in Gmail, from my agent's mail. So I'm going to type in the credentials and just a random character from whatever comes in my head. The idea is just for me to test and see that this email can both receive and send. So here I'm saying just testing. This is just a test mail. I'll now go ahead to launch my Gmail and I can see that it's a POC is able to send an email out. So now I want to send an email into POC from my Gmail. And I'm doing the same thing. So just basically anything that comes to mind. Just to explain the proof of concept. This is just to test that you can receive exactly messages, and then I'm sending. I'll go back to my POC on agent's mail, refresh the page, and then I should be able to see this email right there in my inbox, agent's mail inbox. So yeah, that's it here. So that checks that this email that we've created under agent mail can both receive and send. The next thing is from our from our N10 instance, we want to create our workflow. There are a number of ways to create your workflow. First can be to create from scratch. We can also choose to import file, and or we can import a template, an already made template. But for the purpose of this video, I'm importing a file, a template I've already created previously, and now I have imported that template. I want to set up the configuration and then begin testing to see that all checks well. So first thing is I want to create the webhook. So I'm giving the webhook a path. I'm setting up all that I need and I'm copying the test URL for that webhook. Now I'll go to my agent's mail, launch webhook and add endpoint. I will paste the URL I've copied from my anything, whatever, and then I'll paste it in there. What I want it to listen for is message received on this particular agent. So I'm creating, okay, there's an error. It says something about HTTPS. Yes, and that's where ngrok comes in. We had already linked ngrok to a public URL. So I'll just go back to my anything public URL and copy the ngrok URL and then return back to agent mail webhook and then paste the public URL there. Okay, so now I believe it should be fine. And then create. Okay, yeah, good, all done. So it's all created now. The next step will be to return to our workflow and listen for an event just to test that this particular trigger is working as expected. I'll return to my Gmail, compose an email, send it to my agent's mail email, which is basically where we are listening from. So once agent mail receives this email, it's expected to going to populate the results and then produce an output on our anything. So now we are here, we are still listening. It should pick the request and yeah, so now we can see that we have an output of headers, a number of other interesting characters. We can see that exactly the email we have sent is what we have here. So we are fine with that particular workflow. We'll move on to the next one to set up configuration. Next one is to pass fields. So there are certain fields of interest if we are working on phishing email, e.g. sender, the subject, the body of the email. Does the email contain an attachment? Does it contain a URL? What kind of URL is it? Is it a malicious one or not? So based on the information from the previous step, the next thing we want to do is pass fields of interest from that step into this particular step for further analysis. So you can also drag and drop if you want to, see more information. So after this is done, we execute the step and we can see that it's already populated that those information of interest. Now this is quite readable as compared to yes, the previous email. Then now is to analyze email. So this is where our Gemini comes in. So we set up credentials. We need an API key. So we'll go to Gemini to create an API key. I'll add the link to this in the description below. So we want to get the Gemini API key. So you can use any of these two links, but I'll share the particular link with you. So you create an API key. You can create an API key using an already existing project, or you can create a new project so that we can understand. I'll create a new project here and then I'll name it whatever I like and then create project. Now I'm going to name my API key. I can choose to leave it the way it is and leave it under the selected project. Now we have an API key. What we need to do is to copy this API key, return to our n8n instance, and go paste it there under the Gemini configuration setup and save. It's going to test the connection. If you are all good, it will tell you the connection is successful. If not, you may have to check what you have done wrong or you create another API key. So connection was successful. We're happy with this. We've already inputted a prompt and we are executing the step. Now we can see the information. It's not quite clear, and that's where the JavaScript comes in. So JavaScript is going to pass this particular information, clean it up for us, and make it more readable. Now that we have done that, we've executed the step, and we can see that this is a lot more readable. So seems like we're making a lot of progress. Um, I want to do an entire flow of the process. So now I'm executing the step. I want us to see how this works now after all of the explanation I've made. So first step is after I start executing, I'll send another email and let's assume that this is a classical case of a phishing attempt. So now I'm sending an email saying welcome to your Microsoft account. As a new subscriber, you would require your password and enroll MFA authentication. Sounding interesting. To do so, click on this link and then I'll just add any random link and I'll add a few more details to avoid account logout. Something about urgency, right? So this personalized link is only valid for 2 hours. And yeah, phishing emails are common with typographical errors. So I'm correcting all of that just to see how our flow works. So now I've sent, it's listening in for event. Yeah, we're getting results, which obviously tallies with the email we have just sent. So if we move on to the next step, it's also, past the field and now it has linked it to our Gemini prompt, which is our AI prompt. And although this is not so readable, we'll move to the next step where it's a lot more readable, saying sender domain does not match the claimed sender. So we can see that this explains the classical case of phishing and how it can be analyzed rather than doing manual tests and all of that. So just to show how it will work without having to click on each of the workflow, I want to test with another email. So just any random email and see, just so we see how the automation moves from one step to the other. So now this email, I'm attaching a file, I'm returning to n8n. I will see all the green check mark as it's moving from one point to the other. Ingest mail with check first, pass email, check first, analyzing email context, check first, and then display results, check first. So it says workflow completed successfully. So very interesting. We're approaching the end of this and just going through each of it and seeing that exactly the same thing we had just sent is what is analyzing. So we see how interesting it is to harness the power of AI for phishing. Yeah, they say AI will take over your job, but if you know what you're doing, you just use it to make your work faster and easier. I want to add an extra node. So this one will be to send an email. So I want to have like a special email for alerts when my prompt analyzes all of this information, and if it picks any suspicious note, it should send me an alert. So now I'm going to select what my from email will be, to email will be, the subject, and the content of the email. So the content of the email will be, there has been a phishing attempt on the user, and then it's going to give me full information or details so I can know how to analyze it, how to know if it's a false positive or a false negative, how to escalate if there's a need, or initiate incident response process. So it's just basically all of these. So I'm going to need to set up email credentials. I presume it will be better to have like a different email for the purpose of alert. So I'm creating a new email under agent mail, which I'm naming POC alert. And then I'll return to my NA10 instance. I would swap the information I have here. So it will be that email is sent from Gmail to my agent mail. So from Gmail, you would need an app password here, which is what I've just created. I'll share the link below on how to create an app password as well. And that's how you're going to set up your email credentials. So for user, it will be the email address you are sending from, and then password is the app password we just created. Host, it depends on what domain you are using, port number, and all of that. You get that information in the link. So that's another connection successful. We are executing this step, and that is it. If we go back to agent mail to confirm that our email was received, you will be able to see it there. So back to agent mail now, and we'll refresh. And yeah, that's it. This just explains a classical case of how phishing analysis can be done. And this was all done in, basically less than 20 minutes. That's going to be basically most of the next step will be to publish your workflow. Now we're happy with our workflow. We want to publish it. We give it a name of our choice. We can choose a description, which is optional, but here I'm saying workflow to automate incident response for phishing attack or phishing attempt. And that's it. Published, all good to go. Everything all set, system secured. Thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.